You know what?
All right, Ken, tell them about the two ducks, what you will buy.
Here we go, Ken.
Well, this is pretty near where the whole thing started. That's a picture of George Fellows, who was the hatchery man for
Can you put the mic
25
closer
years.
to your mouth?
Or turn it.
He lived on the Clinton Road.
Tip it.
Everybody knows him. That's eggs sitting in the incubator. Oh, I gotta have it up here. All right. I'm not very used to this, I guess. That's our hatchery man, as I said before. He's been our hatchery man for 25 years. That's the inside of one of our incubators. We had 3 incubators and 1 hatcher. And as you can see, the machine is all tipped forward. The machine is approximately 15,000 eggs in each machine. And it's a big shaft that goes through the middle. The eggs are tipped forward. 6 hours later, they tip back at a 45-degree angle. So they tip back and forth during the day. That keeps the yolk suspended in the egg so that it doesn't stick to the shell. I guess that's about all I can say about that one.
On with the innovation period.
That's a picture of the incubators. They're all made out of redwood, beautiful machine, all made out in Denver, Colorado. Everything in them was automatic practically. The heat and the humidity. The eggs were kept in there for 4 weeks and the temperature wouldn't vary much more than half a degree for 28 days. And the humidity would be set all automatically. You can see the flight of stairs down at the end of the building. Every duck that we hatched all the years I was in business was carried up those stairs and put into the nursery, which is the next building up the road. That's another picture of the eggs in the incubator. That's looking at the hatchery. There's a setting of eggs sitting down there on the rack, all ready to be set. We had 2 hatches a week, every Tuesday and every Thursday. We killed 2 hatches every week and we had to. Now there's the baby ducks. That's in the hatchery. We take them out 3 days before they hatch. We take them out of the incubator, put them in the hatcher, and put them in a tray with a screen cover on it, so when they hatch, they don't jump out. I don't know how many people are familiar with this sort of thing, but when these little ducks get ready to hatch, there's a little cutter on the end of their bill, and they stick their head out into the air cell, take that little cutter and cut the end of the egg off and come out of the egg. After 3 or 4 days, that little thing on their bill will fall off. That's a picture of the ducks up in the nursery. That would be from the incubator. They go into from the hatchery. They go into the incubator. Up here, they're put into the nursery floor. The little ones will be on this side here for 3 days, and the floor is heated with the radiant heat. It's a cement floor with steel pipes through it, running with hot water. We put a couple of inches of shavings on the floor to make it feel like they're sitting in the nest. And by having the only heaters in the floor, you don't have to heat the whole great big building. The ducks are sitting on the floor and they're very comfortable. They'll stay on one side of the nursery for 3 days, then when we hatch another hatch, they'll be moved on to the other side. Maybe while I'm on this, in the nursery subject, I'll tell you, when the baby ducks were moved from this house, every week we had to move them out to make room for the next 2 hatches. in the further side of this place, we have a little trap door in the floor. We had a 2-foot wide rubber belt underneath there with 6-inch sides on it. When we get ready to move this hatchet duct from this house into the next one, we'd open that little trap door and chase the ducks over there, and they'd fall down on this rubber belt, and the escalator would take them right into the next house. Without us having to touch them, or take them outdoors, and a couple of guys in the next house would be in there to help them stand up when they jump off the escalator so that they would climb up. It was very interesting to see it. Yep, that's the other side of it. You can see the bedding up there. We had quite a few, didn't we? That's the bedding. Sometimes we use the shavings, and sometimes we use peanut shells. There's a door in the end where all the buildings, we had the door big enough so we could open and drive a truck right in here. Of course, believe it or not, that's me on the left-hand side 7 years ago. We were chasing the ducks inside this building. See, they're not old enough to have enough feathers, so if they get caught in the rain, it's not good for them. So we let them outdoors every day that we can because it's good for them to get the exercise. And if we hear that the weather's going to be bad, we get out there and everybody gets together. We herd them back into the building and shut the door. That's some ducks. At one time, many years ago, we dammed up the brook down in the Weeki Brook. We had some dams across the brook there. We had 17 acres of land down at Crash Junction, and we had little dams in there so they could get in the water and swim. And that's one of the pictures that, no, very few people would know that we ever had ducks down there today. It's all grown up in the trees.
Isn't that the second fairway now?
Those boxers and speed hoppers that right they get their feed, and then right along in the middle, that's why they're swimming in the water. All of those things are gone today.
What is that, Ken?
What is that?
I don't know why we had that there. I would say that's in the wintertime. We ran the business to a certain extent all the time, even in the wintertime. Of course, we had breeder ducks outdoors all the time. And you can see the big piles of snow. When we had a big tractor like the town has, they call it a payloader. We go out there and scrape the yard and push the snow up in the pile. There was a lot of extra work in the wintertime. Those were breeder ducks. They have a little stream of water running down the middle there for something to drink. Looks like you had quite a bit of snow that year, huh? Those aren't very big ones. There's another picture from down below. You wouldn't believe some of those buildings are long gone. You'd never know they were there, would you? How many do you think is there? That's in a pond. That's the first pond that we had on the Weeki Brook down at Price Junction. And when we took them down from the farm they were taken down there where they get washed up and clean their feathers, and of course the exercise made them grow better. They really loved being in the water.
How did you get them down to Pratt's Junction?
I don't hear that well, so I don't know.
How did you move them down to Pratt's Junction?
I don't hear it that way. I'm sorry, but I'm hard to hear it.
Can somebody move up towards Ken and translate?
Ken, how did they transport the ducks
Well,
to the pond?
a little later on in some of these pictures, there's a thing that we use to transfer.
You'll get to that.
Okay.
That's just another picture of the same thing. Yep, that's some more pictures of the same thing. That's some of the places where we damn the water. all of the dams that we built across there, they're all still there. When the leaves are gone on the trees, if you went down there, you'd be able to see them. Across the street from the main farm, we had some buildings similar to the one on the upper left there. We used to call them sheds. They were just shelters where they could get underneath at night, there's electric lights in there, and give them a chance to get outdoors. Of course, we needed the space. Sometime along here, I'll explain some of the other things, but the ducks had to be moved constantly all around. That's a picture taken down there. I don't know whether you recognize where that was or not. You recognize that bridge?
Yeah.
If you want to spend a half a minute, I'll explain it to you.
Yeah, go.
Go ahead.
The guy who owned Twin Oaks Restaurant, one day he said, suppose you could put 15 or 20 ducks on the pond over there by my restaurant. You folks know where the water used to be, and that's the bridge that goes over there. And I said, sure. We're raising a new batch of breeder ducks, and I'll bring you over 3,000. How would you like that? So we took 3,000 ducks over there, and they stayed all summer. We put our feed hoppers out there in the field, and he said, boy, it really helped my business. You'd be surprised how many people came to see them. Anyway, we thought it was very interesting.
What about predators at night?
Those are feed hoppers you can see in the front there where they're eating.
Ken, what about predators for the ducks?
Huh?
What animals would attack ducks, or can
What
they protect
animals do bother
themselves?
us?
Yeah.
Well, outside of the neighbor's dog, you mean? Coons used to bother us, but we put a fence all the way around the farm, 6 feet high, and put a couple of electric wires around the top of it to keep the coons and things. Coons would climb over the fence at nighttime. But we didn't have a lot of trouble. I would say that probably coons. We rarely saw a fox. Sometimes I think there's so many of them that they were frightened of them. But the coons should probably be the biggest problem. That's quite a few ducks. That was all down to the operation we had at Crash Junction. Have you heard of that? We hauled, most all of the ducks were taken from the main farm down there. Get a chance to be in the water before we took them to the processing plant.
Is that a net? What's this? What's that, Ken?
I don't know what that is.
There was no net over this, was
Just
there?
more ducks, that's about it, I guess. We had a 2-foot high fence around most of it, but when they get big enough, the breeder ducks, we had to have a high fence. It was rather difficult in the wintertime to raise ducks, to keep all the yards clean and so forth. Those are ducks, the laying ducks, that's the backside of the breeder house. Maybe I might explain a little bit about the breeder duck. Each female duck would lay on an average of 5 eggs a week, and they would probably be 95% fertile. And out of the 95% fertile eggs, we would hatch about 70% of them. And in the breeder house, for every female duck, we had 1 male. We would have on average 3,000 laying ducks, and we would have two groups of breeders. One would be laying eggs, and the other one would be on vacation. And every 2 weeks, every 2 years, we would raise a third set of breeders. They would lay for an average of 30 weeks, and then we close them down and let the new batch come in. And that would, I could sit here for the whole hour and explain to you the breeding business. But that's the most complicated part of the whole business, because You can't buy other ducks from anybody else to mix in with yours, so the whole process is inbreeding. Well, when they're dealing with inbreeding, it requires a lot of trap nesting and a lot of book work. That is the one particular thing that I did exclusively myself. Well, that looked to me like somebody I've seen before. I didn't like to shoot anything, but I always had a gun in my truck. And once in a while, if I saw him carrying a duck, I might shoot him. But if he's just hanging around, I might try to scare him away, you know? Now, you can, if you look closely, you'll see the floor has a mesh wire floor. That floor is in one of our long buildings. That floor is 4 inches above the cement floor, and it's laid on 3/4 inch galvanized pipe with a plastic coated, heavy plastic coated wire that is made in Belgium. The only place in the world they claim that they make that. Now you can see the length of the building. When you have that kind of a floor, we had automatic floor washers. The buildings were built with a 3-foot pitch on them. Most of them was 250 to 300 feet long, and there was a 3-foot drop from one end to the other end, and the floor washer on the higher end would flush the water down between these 2-foot wide furrows in the floor and wash all the manure and stuff all down to the end of the building. And from there it went in a big pipe over into the separator house where we separated the solids from the liquid. They didn't see the mine walking on the floor, and the mesh you can see is only 1/2 inch square. You can see the little feed hoppers over there. We're in the process there of selecting the breeders. And I don't really want to go into that because it's a long process, but you need to, it's a lot of practice, and we pick them up and they can tell after you learn the business, you can tell by the shape of them and the look of them and the color of their eyes, the way they look. That's the way you select them. And at the same time, I might say this, do you realize that the females are the ones that talk? The males don't have any voice.
Hasn't changed.
If you hear any duck quacking, you know it's a female. That's the thing we used to transport them in. We had the trailer where you could drive right up to the building and load them. And from here, the ducks would take them from different houses around the farm, if they were too far apart to walk. And the large ones would take them down to the pond, and all the ducks were brought from the pond to the processing plant. This is the last thing that they would ride in. You see, they're evidently unloading some ducks from another house into this one here. You take a look. That is back in the day. Now that young man right there, Mr. Douglas Hayes, who started the duck business, that is his youngest son. He had 2 girls and 2 boys, and everybody passed away except one. The older boy is still living, and he lives in Florida. I talk with him once in a while, talk about old times. But that's back in the days when the grain used to come in freight cars and 100-pound bags. And I'll tell you, that's a lot of work.
Is that
And if you want to know how much grain these ducks eat, I can tell you that we used to have an average of 100,000 on the farm at most any time. And every 20 ducks that we have will eat a ton of feed in 49 days. 49 days was a lifespan of the duck, from the day we hatched it until it went to the processing plant. And during that period, the average would be 100 ducks would eat a ton of feed. That's what we used to use to dig the ditches, to put the water pipes and stuff in. We thought that was something in those days. To have something to dig the ditch besides a shovel, you know? Plain crust duck plant. That was taken down at Crash Junction. We had a sand pit down there, It's all gone today. We used to haul sand up, we used to clean the yards by scraping them and haul away the stuff and put clean sand on it. That was a constant job. That was a small tractor. If you want to know the truth, I don't recognize that. I don't think that was any of our operation. That fellow in the background, way in the back, I don't know whether you recognize him. You know Nelson Matthew?
Yeah.
There used
Yes,
to be a place in Clinton called Clinton Concrete, and they used to do the concrete work for us. I don't know what they were building, but you can see they got a cement mixer there and so forth. Looked to me like we were putting in the new dam down on the left. We were always building something. That's what they're doing. We had 7 different dams on it. That is the well drilling company, Opal Oakdale. They were putting in a well. We had took a tremendous amount of water for the farm. We had 3 gravel packed wells, exactly like the ones that the town has to supply water for the farm. Each one of them they were only 55 feet deep. They had a 10-inch casing in them with a turbine pump on top, each run by a 20 horsepower motor. We had the generator down there in case the power went off, and the well people said we had a capacity of 500 gallons a minute. Well, that's some of the building. You can see some of the buildings on the left. You can see that they have a pitch to them. They're lower on one end than the other. We had 14 structures on the whole farm. Probably about 10 of them we used to raise ducks in. Some of them are 300 feet long. They all had heat, electricity, running water, automatic feeders. Way up in the back, you can see something. I don't recognize that. That was a building we used for many, many years. We closed it down near the end of the operation. We used that for experiment. We ran the building while we were experimenting on all kinds of things that we. Those are the same ones, isn't it? That's the trailer, goes to the shop. That's the grain where our feed came in, down in Press Junction. There's a long story goes with that if you have a little bit of time. That storage held 500 tons of feed. We had 4 different kinds of feed in there. We had a starter feed, a grower feed, a finisher feed, and a breeder feed. And that was back, if we were lucky by that time, we'd convinced the grain company to make all the feed in pellet form and send it in bulk cars. We used to come in on the railroad track at Pratt Junction in 45-ton bulk cars, and they would put the car right over we had a trap in between the 2 rails, and they'd open that, we'd open the bottom of the car, and the grain would run out, and the regular elevator would take it up to the top and put it in a separate chute depending on what kind of grain it was. And we could unload about 45 tons of feed in about 2 hours without doing anything other than just watch to make the machinery with everything was running all the way. We built all of that ourselves. Between the Clinton concrete and the help we had at the farm, we built the whole thing ourselves. The truck used to drive, it's made so that the truck can drive right underneath it, and there's a chute on the bottom of each side. You pull the lever, and our truck would hold 3 tons of pellets, and we could fill it up in about 15 seconds. It's all been torn down now. Somebody asked me who that was, and I never could figure out who it was. To this day, I don't know who it is.
I heard stall and stall.
Could be.
It looked to me like that's when we were building it, but I guess most of it is built with that. Some of the old trucks we used to have. You never know it was there. That was not a hopper car, that would be probably, that car probably had shavings or peanut shells in it. We used to buy those by the freight car load. One time when we ordered some peanut shells from an outfitter down in Georgia, I was talking to the guy on the phone. I said, "You suppose you could send me a bag of peanuts when they send all these shells?" He said, "Sure." When we opened the door to unload the thing, the car, a big bag of peanuts fell all on the ground. It took two of us to lift it. There's another picture of it. Looks like that's before we got the thing. We were still working on it. When you figure we built the thing ourselves, it took us a long time. That's a picture of a hopper car. That's what they looked like in those days. There's a big thing opening in the bottom. You take a big lever, open it up, and the grain would run right out there. That's an old truck we got back in the days when after the Second World War. The government sold a lot of surplus stuff. So we bought some four-wheel drive trucks from them that were very handy around the farm. That's another shot of it. That thing you see right in the front there, that's the house.
Sorry.
That's why see the thing in between the track, we just take that out, slide it out, and the grain ran right down between the rails and went into the flat belt that's underneath there, and it went over and dropped into a bucket, and the regular elevator, an endless belt with little buckets on it, picked it up and carried it all the way up to the top and dropped it in the chutes. Saved us, you can't imagine how much work it saved us. That's the house that belonged to Mr. Hayes. We built 90% of the house ourselves. He wanted to build us, I might tell you, probably everybody here knows where Chris's barber shop is. The house that Chris lives in down on the corner used to sit there. And one day Mr. Hayes said he wanted to build himself a house, but he'd like to build it over there. So he hired somebody to move the house and took it down and put it down on the corner and built this new house over there. When I first went to the farm, I was single and I lived with Mr. Hayes for quite a few years. He was like father and son to me. He just read it up. I've eaten quite a few of them. You can see they've been well defeathered, we'll say. I know there are some people here working in the processing plant. That was quite an operation, we thought.
Do you want to tell them?
We actually built that place ourselves too.
Ken, do you want to tell them how you defeathered them? Do you want to tell them how you take the feathers off?
You want me to tell them?
I do.
Well, first off, the first operation, they go through a scalding. And there's a endless chain that goes all around the farm that carries it up. They go down into a scalder, they come up out of the scalder, and the thing that trips the thing that holds it up, and they drop into a large stainless steel tank, you might call it, and the bottom revolves around. There are rubber fingers sticking out the side all the way around this thing, and some rubber fingers sticking out the bottom. This bottom whirls around and it rubs the ducts against the side of it, and that rubs the feathers off. And the floor has about an inch space around the edge so the feathers fall down through there, underneath that. After this thing spins around, the time, I don't know, take 2 minutes, I forget what the time it takes. then the door would automatically open, and when the thing went around, it spun the ducks out onto a table. And they used to call that the pinning table. And the ladies would hang the duck back up on the hanger, and they would start to pull out some of the feathers that didn't get caught, and some of the pin feathers and so forth. And from there on, it went around the corner, and it dipped down into a tank of hot wax, and it went along through the tank, coated the ducks in good shape with hot wax. It came up out of this tank of hot wax and down into a tank of cold water, and it went around. The cold water tank was like an L, went down to another end. As it came out of there, people stood on both sides of the hangers, and the wax that was on the duck would be similar to the shell on the walnut, and they just cracked the shell, and all of the pin feathers and hair, and anything left on them would be in that wax. So from there on, the ducks would be just like you see them right there. And the wax is pumped into a tank and melted down to a degree where they can run it through a strainer. They strain the pin feathers and all the stuff out and pump it back into the wax tank. They come out pretty good, don't they?
Yeah.
That's Mr. Hayes. Everybody on the farm, including me, call him the old man. They used to call him the old man and me the young man. He was 25 years older than I was, and he and I tried to keep the place going as best as we could. Both of us worked 7 days a week, just like nothing. I don't know where that was, but, well, that was down to Boston. Used to get down to Boston and take some ducks to some of these big restaurants and let them cook them and put on a dinner and so forth, kind of like an advertising program. I don't recognize the cook, but that's Mr. Hayes. And I'm sure there are people in town who remember him. He was on the board of selectmen, and he was a great fisherman. The ducks were packed in boxes of 6, depending, and they were weighed and marked on. You can see that one was 5 pounds, 2 ounces. From there, they went into the blast freezer. We had the freezer was 40 below zero with a wind blowing. They looked a little out of shape. That is Mr. Hayes. I don't know any of the people with him. He used to spend a lot of his time traveling around the country, and at that time there were about a dozen duck farms on Long Island, and he used to go back and forth. You never know when you're going to learn something from somebody else, you know. So he traveled a lot. That's the front of his house. I don't know who that is out in front. I still don't recognize him. Oliver. There's the paint just up there. Yeah. Albright Road was built. It was a good sized business. We had on average 25 to 30 people, and that's Mrs. Hayes. Yep, and I don't know who the other gentleman is. I can't read what it says on it. Yeah. Well, Bill Walters. Can't quite make it up.
Ben staff.
I would say that's at one of the dinners that they put on down in Boston, probably. I used to go down once in a great while, but very, very seldom. Yeah. Advertising. Vacuum package. quick frozen. All the giblets are included. And duck for 35 cents. Today they're $1 and something. I see duck advertised in the supermarket for around $10 for a 6-pound duck. Hard to believe. Yep, that was down at Press Junction. Just ducky. That's us chasing ducks from one building to another. But somebody was moving ducks every day of the week. We had to move 2 hatches of ducks all around the whole farm in order to make room for them. They would kill off 2 hatches and we'd refill them all the way back to the nursery. That was a constant job, no matter what the weather is. That's what it looked like inside of the breeder house. It's a long story. You could write a book about the breeding process. And we had some of the best breeders in the country. In fact, we used to raise breeding stock. For several years, we raised the breeding stock for a duck farm up in Canada called Brome Lake. That's all across the street. That's out back of the breeder duck. That's some big ducks being loaded onto the trailer, getting ready to prop. I would say by the looks of them, that time of year they were probably going to the processing plant. It was a fun job, to tell you. We have 214 acres of land, and we think we use a little over 100 of them. It's a lot of work just to keep the fences up. Little baby duck. That guy's name is Clark. Man, work to find this guy. I'll tell you one thing that makes me feel good. Not too long ago, one day I went walking in the door to church, and the man came over to me and shook my hand. He said, "Do you remember me?" And I really didn't, but he told me who he was. He said, "I remember," he said, "when I got out of the service, I couldn't find a job anywhere, and you gave me a job on the farm." He said, "I'll never forget it." That sort of thing makes me feel good. Security guard, we had a night watchman. We really need to have somebody around at night. Fresh native duckling. I got a funny little story about the native duckling. The Sterling-Lancaster hired a new chef, and I guess he must have been from New York City or something, because he put an ad in the paper saying they're having Long Island duck special. And I read that and I thought to myself, they used to call up the farm and order. We used to take maybe a couple of boxes of ducks to them a couple times a week. And I went right by the Sterling Inn on the way home. Well, I used to take a couple of boxes in the kitchen and leave them. So I went in the kitchen and on the way home, and I said to the guy, "Those Long Island ducks you advertise, I'd like to see some of them." "Oh, sure," he said. He took out one of the fine cut duck and laid it on it. That's one right there. And I said, I explained to him what the story was. I don't blame him. I think the Long Island ducks were well known long before ours were, you know. I don't know, that's some of the guys who work in that building stuff, I guess.
Are you in any of
How about that for
these
old car? I don't recognize that. I don't recognize that either. Now I recognize it. No? I still don't know that. Those are one of the sheds across the street. After
I've
I
got about 100
retired,
more pictures.
I had a whole stack of papers at home that I kept records from over years and years. And I tried one winter to add it up. And as near as I can tell, I hatched about 19 million baby ducks in my
Lorette,
Yes.
maybe the microphone could be handed around and people could ask Ken questions. And maybe if they speak loudly into the microphone, Ken can hear.
If you have any questions too, or if you wanted to add anything. How many people here used to work at the farm? Merrily used to.
Question period.
If you tell me what they're saying, and I'll be more than happy.
Okay, I can yell really loud. Anybody want a question? Oh,
We
come on.
hit the back lights.
All right.
Ken, who is your biggest supplier? I mean, who you sold to?
I think that's what she said.
Who was our biggest person that we sold ducks to? The enterprise.
We used to send the duck down with outfit in Boston called Thorndike and Garish. They were, we used to send the duck to Boston at the end of every day. This was in the beginning, back in the early 40s, to an outfit called Thorndike and Garish. And they handled chickens and turkeys and things and sold them all around to the markets. That's before the days, I guess, of the supermarket. And they handled, at that time, they handled all the ducks that we had. But as the years went by and we got to raising more ducks and everything changed, you probably remember when frozen foods first came out, they called them bird's eye, frozen peas and all that stuff. Anyway, we teamed up with them and eventually we got to selling our ducks to these people that deliver frozen food. They had a big warehouse in Boston, and these trucks would come in there and they'd load up with frozen chickens and turkeys and ducks. They went to the supermarkets all over, all the way from here to Hartford to Baltimore. Of course, they'd go to the supermarket and leave, let's say, a couple hundred chickens, a couple hundred turkeys, and they'd leave some ducks for us, which, but you couldn't send a salesman around to all these supermarkets, you know, try to sell a few ducks. So, outside of Thorndike and Garish in the beginning and getting into the people of frozen food delivery people, that's how we get rid of it. And July was the only month of the year when we had a chance to put any surplus ducks in the freezer. All the rest of the time we were able to sell every single duck that we raised. We would accumulate a few ducks in July. I suppose people on vacation or something, we never could quite figure out what it was. But we didn't have any trouble getting on. In fact, some people would call us up and wanted to buy 30,000 pounds of ducks and we wouldn't have it.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
I'm sorry I can't hear everything they say,
Yeah,
but I guess my old age is caught up to me.
What
I
did
have a
you,
hearing aid that works lousy.
what did you do with the unfertile eggs?
What did you do with the unfertile eggs?
Well, we had several different things we did for them. If we couldn't get rid of them any other way, Christoph used to have a pig farm. And he said they liked them.
The pigs or the
Christmas? I tell you, when you stop to think about it, if you put 100 eggs in the incubator, and 95% of them are fertile, and you can only hatch 70%. We worked all the years I was in business to try to improve that. And you take a duck and put her out in the nest in the swamp, she'll lay a dozen eggs and hatch every one of them.
Wow.
We could, when you're working with nature, it makes you realize how little you really know about nature. It really does.
Nobody ate duck eggs?
I was gonna add to
Yeah,
that.
because
In the
I did.
factory, they used to bring the eggs in. I did a lot of baking.
Yeah.
I did a lot of baking with those eggs.
Yeah. Vicky, did you have a
No.
question? You could just
Many,
ask,
many people.
just
my
ask
wife
and
told me
and
they
Marilee
said that
can
chicken, they
ask
could
him.
cook.
They are,
Yeah.
yeah.
Marilyn,
Yes.
you asked him, what happened, what did you do with all the feathers and stuff? You just throw that stuff away?
No. Every bit of the duck was used. They want to know what we did with the feathers.
Duck soup.
Down.
How long you want to stay? This long story goes with the feathers. There used to be a place in New York City. where They were the only people they claimed that bought feathers, and I think it was. They used to come around to us, 3 or 4 guys in the limousine. They'd come in the office and they'd say, well, we had a lot of feathers. And they would say, well, this is how much they are. The price of feathers just went down yesterday. And this is what it is. So Mr. Hayes, being a smart guy like he was, he said, we're not going to put up with that. So we went down to Worcester Cold Storage, made arrangements with them, and we stored our feathers over there for 2 years. We paid storage fees and everything before we found somebody to buy the feathers. We finally found an outfit in Germany, and all the rest of the time that we were in the business, we sold the ducks to Germany.
No kidding.
There's a long story to go through the feathers. Would you like to have me tell you that too?
Sure.
These people come around and said, if you could divide the feathers, the big feathers on their wings and the tails, from the feathers that's on their body, from the fine down that's next to their skin, we could give you a really big price for the down especially, because they knew the big feathers. So we thought, boy, gonna get somebody to pick up the big ones and put them here. That's an impossible job. So one day, I'm going to say, the old man and I we used to walk around the farm and talk to ourselves about what's going on and so forth. One day, we stepped over the fence and there was some bunch of big feathers laying in the mud. Looked over there and there was some of the body feathers were stuck in the wire to the, all the yards of the 2-foot-high wire chicken fence around. There's some body feathers in the thing up there. He said, you know, we got an idea. So we went back to the office and we sat around and talked about it for a while. And we built a building 125 feet long. We had Duval sheet metal people up in Leominster build us a fan to put in the end of the building with 4 foot wide, 4 foot long blades on it. We went up on the roof, we cut a trap door in the roof, and we took a big bag of feathers up there. If you know what feather bags look like, they're about, well, probably 2.5 feet diameter, about 5 or 6 feet tall. Took a bag of feathers up there, turned the fan on, dumped the feathers down through this hole. The big feathers dropped within the first 30, 40 feet. The body feathers were halfway down the building, and all the flying dove fuzz that was on, we call it down, was against the wall at the far end of the building. And actually, some places there was a bare spot between the piles of feathers. What we thought we could get made. We bagged up the feathers, and we would never, never, never tell anybody how we did it. Well, I shouldn't say this, but before we sold the business, we closed the feathers, separated the house down, and raised ducks in it, because we didn't think that. We kind of felt, we knew that somebody was going to buy it. Someday we were all getting old, we were going to sell the business. So we tried to we shut down the building while we did the experimenting, and we shut down the feather separated house because we figured that people coming in there that didn't understand the business would have all they could do to run the business without trying to do all these sideline jobs that we had. But it worked for us. And I might say this, you may not believe it, but on average, if the ducks were raised properly, we would have $1 worth of feathers on each one.
Wow.
Well, it was a very important part. I know some of you course, the price of grain and every other thing fluctuated. Some years, the only money we made was selling the feathers.
Crazy. Any other questions?
I worked 40 years at it.
What year did the duck farm close?
I can still hear the duck quack.
What year did that close down? The duck farm, what year?
There's some guys, there's a guy in there someplace that was there when they closed down. We sold it to Wright and Grain Company in Manchester, Connecticut in 1978. And I think it ran for 4 years after that. I left in 1978 and these people took it over. It makes me feel bad though. I spent my whole life's work down there to see the whole, and the end of thing went up in smoke. It makes me feel it was a tragedy.
Ask him about the duck feed.
Duck feet, what about
Could
it?
be a good
Ask him
business.
what they did with the duck feed.
The duck feet?
Yes.
Every part of the duck was used except for the quack.
Well, I can say that it went through the eviscerating line. And I'm not used to something. As it went through the eviscerating line, they cut off the feet. And the feet were put in those
Okay,
whack boxes,
I'm gonna tell
put in the freezer and froze.
them.
We took them down to Boston and they shipped them on a boat to Hong Kong, where they claimed they made a consommé soup out of them. It was supposed to be very good.
Yum.
Both the liver and the heart and the gizzard and all that sort of thing was put in a whack bag and put back in the duck. That was all gibberish. But the blood, we could have, there was a long story with the blood too. Harvard University in Boston tried for years and years to get us to save the blood. But in order to save the blood for they were going to experiment with it. In order to do that, we had to build a special building and everything had to be just like a hospital. And we figured it would be too much work to try to keep it clean, so the blood went to waste. Let's see, what else did we do? All of the inside, all the intestines and everything were taken out, and that was put into boxes like the feet were, and we sold it to mink farmers. That was a natural food for mink, so we got rid of that. So I think the only thing, all of the rest of the stuff, except the head and the bill, went in with the in with the inside, and the mink farmer bought it. So we actually didn't throw away anything really.
I can add to that because the bills and the feet that went into Japanese candy, we used to have guys that would stop at the shop and buy bills and feet. But I don't know what the process was, but I know they were all Japanese that came and bought.
Those kind of people come, they want to come right to the farm and buy the stuff themselves.
Yeah, they would come right to the farm.
Wow.
But I know it went into Japanese, some kind of Japanese candies.
Any other questions?
Go to Japan, don't eat the candy.
All the farms, the whole town of Sterling,
Yeah.
a lot of grass. The water treatment plant is another process, and there's a lot of things involved. In the 60s, the EPA came around, they said you can't keep the ducks on the brook anymore, can't do that, so we had to bring them all home. And then they come up and said all the water that you use from the farm, every single bit of it has to be processed. There was about 7 acres of wetland out the back of the processing plant, and of course we used all that water we had after we took the mineral out of it, was dumped into there, but it wasn't clean. They said you're gonna have to clean that. So boy, we didn't know anything about how to do that. So we had a little conference, and I'm gonna say the old man again. The old man said we're gonna go to Amherst, which is an agricultural college, and have them tell us what and how to do it. So we went over there and they said, well, this is all brand new to us. We've got to set up some kind of an installation. So the old man again said, we'll build the installation if you'll take responsibility for it. So I'm not going to go into the dollars and cents, but we built everything that they wanted us to build. We put in the pond, the big aerators in it. We bought what they call a bow screen where we pumped the water that came from all the duck houses over the screen, and it separated 95% of the solids from the water. And all of this was in charge of the Amherst College. So when the EPA guys came around, you know, I'd like to see what you're doing. I don't have anything to do with it. You speak to the college people, and they took care of the whole thing. One of the smartest moves we ever made. But it was a good idea, because all the water that left the farm eventually, I'm gonna say the last 10, 15 years of being in business, all the water that left the farm was all, I had to have I had a sewer plant license to run a sewer plant and all that kind of stuff. I still have it down how. Has this been interesting?
Awesome.